I was 64 years old when I learned that the son I raised could break my heart in ways I never imagined. My name is Lorraine Davis, and I spent 35 years working as a school administrator in Chicago. I raised my son Marcus by myself after his father passed when Marcus was just 7 years old. I worked double shifts, sacrificed vacations, and put every penny I could into making sure that boy had opportunities I never had. I sent him to college. I helped him with his first car. I was there when he graduated with his business degree, tears streaming down my face because I was so proud. And when he married Candace 5 years ago, I welcomed her into our family with open arms. I wanted to love her like the daughter I never had. I really did. But standing at my front door that Tuesday evening in October, looking at my son's ashamed face and his wife's cold smile, I realized I never really knew either of them at all. "Mom," Marcus said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Can we come in? We need to talk." I looked at the 3 large suitcases on my porch. Designer luggage, Louis Vuitton, the kind that costs more than most people's monthly rent. My stomach tightened. "What's going on?" I asked, not moving from the doorway. Candace stepped forward, her heels clicking on my porch. She was wearing an outfit that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe, a cream-colored pantsuit with gold jewelry that caught the light. Her hair was freshly done, laid to perfection. Her nails were long and decorated with intricate designs. She looked like she'd just stepped out of a magazine. "Lorraine," she said, using my first name like we were friends, "we've had some changes in our living situation. We need a place to stay for a little while." "Changes?" I repeated. "What kind of changes?" Marcus finally looked up at me. My baby boy. 38 years old, but in that moment, he looked like a scared child. "We sold the house, Mom." The house. The beautiful 4-bedroom home in Oak Park that they'd bought 3 years ago. The house I'd visited for Sunday dinners. The house where I thought they were building their future. "You sold it?" I said slowly. "Why? Where are you moving?" The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on. "We're not moving anywhere," Candace said, her smile never faltering. "That's why we're here." Something cold settled in my chest. "I don't understand." "Mom, can we please come inside?" Marcus asked. "It's getting cold out here." Against my better judgment, I stepped aside. They walked in, Marcus struggling with the heavy suitcases while Candace swept past me like she owned the place. She looked around my living room, my modest but comfortable home that I'd worked hard to maintain, and I saw something flicker across her face. Disappointment? Disdain? I closed the door and turned to face them. "Now somebody better tell me what's going on." Marcus sat down on my couch, his head in his hands. Candace remained standing, examining her nails like this was just a casual visit. "The house sold for $850,000, Marcus said quietly. "After we paid off the mortgage, we had about $600,000 left." My mouth went dry. $600,000. That was more money than I'd made in 10 years of working. "That's good," I said carefully. "That's a lot of money. So where's the new house? Where are you planning to—" "There is no new house," Candace interrupted. "The money's gone." I stared at her. "Gone? What do you mean gone?" "Gone as in spent," she said, examining a fingernail. "Used up. Finished." The room started to spin. $600,000? In how long? "About 8 months, Marcus whispered. 8 months. They'd burned through more than $500,000 in 8 months. How? The word came out as a croak. How is that even possible? Candace finally looked at me, and her smile was gone. In its place was something hard and cold. "I invested it." "Invested in what?" "Various things. Business opportunities, experiences, personal growth, wellness retreats. A lifestyle brand I was developing." She waved her hand dismissively. "It's complicated. You wouldn't understand." "Try me," I said. my voice sharper than I'd ever used with her before. "I don't owe you an explanation," Candace snapped. "This is between Marcus and me. We're here because we need a place to stay while we figure things out." "Figure things out?" I looked at my son, who still wouldn't meet my eyes. "Marcus, what is she talking about? You let her spend all that money?" "I gave her access to the account," he said quietly. "She said she was making investments, building our future. I trusted her." "Investments," I repeated. I walked over and stood in front of my son. "Look at me, Marcus Anthony Davis." He finally raised his head, and I saw tears in his eyes. "Tell me the truth," I said. "All of it." And then the story came out. Slowly at first, then faster, like a dam breaking. Candace had convinced Marcus to sell the house, saying she'd found investment opportunities that would triple their money. She'd taken control of the finances. She'd opened credit cards in both their names. She'd spent thousands on luxury shopping sprees, tens of thousands on spa retreats and wellness consultations. She'd given money to a friend who claimed to be starting a business, a friend who disappeared with $50,000. She'd invested in cryptocurrency schemes that vanished overnight. She'd bought designer handbags, clothes, shoes, jewelry. "And you just let her?" I asked, my voice breaking. "You didn't question any of this?" "I thought she knew what she was doing," Marcus said, tears now streaming down his face. "She was so confident, so sure, and I wanted to trust my wife, Mom. Isn't that what you're supposed to do?" I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. This was my fault too. I'd raised him to be trusting, to see the best in people. I'd taught him that family comes first, that marriage is sacred, but I'd never taught him that sometimes the person sleeping next to you can be your worst enemy. "So now you're broke," I said. "Both of you." "We're not broke," Candace said defensively. "We have some money left, just not enough for a deposit on a new place right now." "How much is some money?" Marcus's voice was barely audible. "About $12,000. From $600,000 to $12,000 in 8 months. I felt sick. "And you came here," I said slowly, "expecting me to take you in." "You're my mother," Marcus said. "Where else would we go?" "You could go to her family," I said, looking at Candace. "What about your parents?" For the first time, Candace looked uncomfortable. "They're not an option." "Why not?" "Because they told us not to sell the house," Marcus said quietly. "Candace's father warned her. They had a huge fight. She hasn't spoken to them in months." So her own parents had seen this coming. They'd tried to stop it. And now that it had all fallen apart, she'd come to me, the mother-in-law she barely tolerated, expecting me to clean up her mess. I looked at these two people in my living room, my son, who I'd raised to be strong and smart, reduced to a crying, broken man who'd let his wife destroy their future. And her, this woman who'd entered my family with a smile and a promise, who'd spent everything they had without a second thought, who was now standing in my home with designer clothes and an attitude like I owed her something. "No," I said. Marcus looked up. "What?" "No," I repeated, my voice stronger now. "You can't stay here." "Mom, please." Marcus stood up, reaching for me. "We have nowhere else to go." "You had somewhere," I said, stepping back. "You had an $850,000 house. You had a future. You had security, and she threw it all away." "This isn't just her fault," Marcus said. "I should have paid more attention. I should have asked more questions. But Mom, I'm your son. You can't just turn me away." My heart was breaking. Every instinct I had as a mother was screaming at me to help him, to take them in, to fix this like I'd fixed every other problem in his life. But something else was speaking louder, a voice that said if I did that, I'd be enabling them. I'd be saying that irresponsibility has no consequences. I'd be letting Candace off the hook for destroying my son's life. "I love you, Marcus," I said, my voice shaking. "I love you more than anything in this world. But I can't do this. I can't watch you let her drag you down further. I can't watch her spend money she doesn't have under my roof. I can't be a part of this. So you're choosing to abandon your own son? Candace said, her voice rising. What kind of mother does that? Something in me snapped. The kind of mother who taught her son to be responsible. The kind of mother who worked herself to the bone to give him opportunities. The kind of mother who wouldn't have burned through $500,000 in 8 months on spa treatments and designer handbags while her husband watched their future disappear. Candace's face twisted into something ugly. You don't know what you're talking about. You've never had real money. You've never understood what it takes to maintain a certain lifestyle, to build a brand, to invest in yourself. Invest in yourself? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. You invested away your home, your security, your marriage, and now you want to bring that disaster into my house? This isn't your decision to make, Candace said, stepping closer to me. Marcus, tell your mother she's being unreasonable. But Marcus just stood there, torn between us. Get out, I said quietly. What? Candace's eyes went wide. I said get out of my house. You can't be serious, she said. Marcus, are you going to let her talk to me like this? Marcus looked at me, and I saw him struggling. Part of him, the boy I'd raised, knew I was right. But another part, the man who'd promised to love and honor his wife, couldn't let himself believe it. Mom, please, he said one more time, just for a few weeks, until we figure something out. I felt tears streaming down my face. I can't, baby. I love you, but I can't. That's when Candace lunged at me. I didn't see it coming. One moment she was standing there, face red with anger, and the next she was in front of me, her hands grabbing my sweater, shoving me backwards. I stumbled, my hip hitting the edge of my coffee table. How dare you! She screamed. How dare you judge me? You think you're so much better than me? You're just a bitter old woman who's jealous that your son chose me over you. Candace, stop! Marcus grabbed her, trying to pull her away from me. But she wasn't done. She picked up one of my picture frames from the side table, a photo of Marcus's graduation, and threw it at the wall. Glass shattered everywhere. You want to throw us out? Fine, but you'll regret this. You'll see what happens when you turn your back on family. You'll see. Marcus finally managed to drag her toward the door. Candace, please stop. Mom, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I stood there, shaking, watching as my son gathered their expensive suitcases and shepherded his screaming wife out of my house. Candace was still yelling threats, still calling me names, her perfect facade completely shattered. The door slammed shut, and I was alone. I sank down onto my couch, my whole body trembling, my hip throbbed where I'd hit the table. Broken glass sparkled on my carpet. And my heart felt like it had been torn in two. I'd just thrown out my only son. The boy I'd raised alone. The man I'd sacrificed everything for. But as I sat there in the silence, I knew I'd made the right choice. Because if I'd let them stay, if I'd enabled Candace's behavior, I'd lose more than just my peace of mind. I'd lose my savings, my home, my security. And I'd lose my son even more completely than I already had. I got up slowly, my hip aching, and started picking up the broken glass. That's when I noticed something on the floor near where Candace had been standing. A receipt. It must have fallen out of her purse during her tantrum. I picked it up and looked at it. It was from a luxury spa in downtown Chicago. The date was from yesterday. The amount was $2,300. Yesterday. They'd sold their house 8 months ago. They were supposedly down to their last $12,000. And yesterday, Candace had spent $2,300 on a spa day. I stared at that receipt, and something shifted inside me. This wasn't just about bad financial decisions anymore. This was something else, something deeper and more disturbing. I went to my bedroom and got my phone. My hands were still shaking as I called Deborah, my next-door neighbor and closest friend for the past 15 years. She'd been asking about Marcus for weeks, wondering why she hadn't seen him come by for our usual Sunday dinners. "Deb," I said when she answered, "I need to talk to you. Something's happened." "Something bad." "I'll be right over," she said immediately. While I waited for her, I looked at that receipt again, and I made a decision. I wasn't going to just walk away from this. I wasn't going to just let Candace destroy my son and then disappear into the night. No, I was going to find out the truth. All of it. I was going to dig into Candace's past, her investments, her mysterious business opportunities. I was going to find out where that money really went. And then I was going to figure out how to save my son from the woman who was destroying him. Because that's what mothers do. We fight for our children even when they can't fight for themselves, even when it costs us everything. The doorbell rang. Deborah. I looked at myself in the mirror above my fireplace. My eyes were red from crying. My sweater was torn where Candace had grabbed it. There was a bruise forming on my hip, but underneath the hurt and the fear, I saw something else. Determination. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I opened the door to let Deborah in, and I knew that everything was about to change. I just had no idea how deep this rabbit hole would go, or what kind of monster I was about to discover hiding in my daughter-in-law's past. But I was about to find out. And when I did, it would shake everything I thought I knew about family, loyalty, and how far a mother will go to protect her child, even from himself. Deborah took one look at me and pulled me into a hug. She was a sturdy woman, 5 years older than me, with gray locks that she wore in a beautiful updo. She'd been a therapist before she retired, and she had this way of making you feel safe just by being in the same room. "Lorraine, baby, what happened to you?" she asked, noticing my torn sweater and the way I was favoring my right side. I told her everything. The words poured out of me like water from a broken dam. Marcus and Candace showing up at my door. The $850,000. The 8 months of reckless spending. Candace attacking me when I refused to let them stay. The spa receipt. Deborah listened without interrupting, her face growing more concerned with every word. When I finally finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "That receipt," she said finally. "Let me see it." I handed it to her. She studied it carefully, her therapist brain working. $2,300 yesterday, she said slowly. "Lorraine, people who are truly down to their last few $1,000s don't spend this kind of money on a spa day. Either she's lying about how much money they have left, or what? Or she has another source of income that Marcus doesn't know about." The thought hadn't occurred to me, but now that Deborah said it, it made perfect sense. How else could Candace maintain her designer lifestyle if they were really broke? "I need to find out what's really going on," I said. "I need to know what she did with that money. I need to understand what I'm dealing with." Deborah nodded. "You're right. But Lorraine, if you're going to do this, you need to be smart about it. You can't just go digging around without protection." "This woman already attacked you once. What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting you call the police and file a report about what happened tonight. Get it on record. Then we call my nephew Gerald. You remember him? He's a lawyer now, specializes in financial fraud cases." I did remember Gerald. Sweet boy who used to cut my grass when he was in high school. I'd helped him with his college essays. Now he was a lawyer. "I don't want to cause trouble," I said automatically, then stopped myself. "No, that's not right. She caused trouble. She attacked me in my own home." "Exactly," Deborah said firmly. "Now let's call the police." The officer who came to take my report was a young black woman named Officer Jenkins. She was professional and kind, taking photos of my bruised hip and torn sweater, documenting the broken picture frame. She asked me detailed questions about what happened. "Has your daughter-in-law exhibited violent behavior before?" she asked. Not that I've seen, I admitted. But I don't know her that well. My son married her 5 years ago, and she always kept her distance from me. Officer Jenkins wrote that down. Mrs. Davis, I want you to understand something. Based on what you've told me, this wasn't just a family argument. This was assault. You have grounds to press charges if you choose to. The word charges made my stomach turn. Could I really do that to my son's wife? But then I remembered her hands grabbing my sweater, shoving me backward, the hate in her eyes, the broken glass. I need to think about it, I said. That's fine, Officer Jenkins said. You have time, but I want you to have this report number. Keep it safe. And, Mrs. Davis? Be careful. People who are desperate and cornered can be dangerous. After she left, Deborah made us both tea and we sat at my kitchen table. It was almost midnight, but neither of us was ready to sleep. Tomorrow, Deborah said, we call Gerald. But tonight, I want you to write down everything you know about Candace. Where she's from, where she worked, who her friends are, everything Marcus ever told you about her. I got a notebook and started writing. It was a painfully short list. Candace was from Atlanta originally. She'd moved to Chicago 6 years ago for a marketing job. She'd met Marcus at a networking event. They'd dated for a year before getting married. She'd worked at some marketing firm, but she'd quit her job about 2 years ago, saying she wanted to focus on building her brand. What brand? Deborah asked. I don't know, I admitted. She was always vague about it. Something about lifestyle consulting and social media influence. Deborah raised an eyebrow. Did she have a big social media following? I pulled out my phone and looked up Candace's Instagram account. I'd followed her when she married Marcus, but I rarely looked at it. What I saw made my mouth fall open. Her page was full of photos. Candace in designer clothes at expensive restaurants. Candace at luxury hotels. Candace showing off handbags and shoes and jewelry. Every photo had hashtags like blessed, living my best life, luxury lifestyle, invest in yourself. She had 42,000 followers. Look at this, I showed Deborah. Look at the dates on these photos. We scrolled through the timeline. The posts went back years, but they'd increased dramatically in the past 8 months. The same 8 months that she'd been spending Marcus's money. Photo after photo of luxury purchases, expensive trips, designer items. And in the captions, she talked about building wealth, investment strategies, and financial freedom. She's not just spending the money, Deborah said slowly. She's bragging about it. She's using it to build this fake image of success. I felt sick. My son's entire future, his home, his savings, it had all been turned into Instagram content. But then I noticed something else. In some of the photos, there was a man, not Marcus, another man. He appeared in maybe 8 or 10 photos over the past few months, always in the background, always at the same luxury locations. In one photo, Candace was at a restaurant, and the man was visible at the next table. In another, she was at a hotel pool, and he was on a nearby lounge chair. Who is that? I asked, pointing to the man. Deborah squinted at the screen. I don't know, but it's strange that he keeps showing up in different places, isn't it? We spent the next hour going through every photo, every comment, every tag, and we found more. The same man appeared in multiple locations. Sometimes Candace would be tagged in photos by other people, and he'd be there. We found his profile. His name was Julian Montgomery. His page was private, but his profile picture showed him in an expensive suit, standing in front of a luxury car. Tomorrow, I said, we find out who Julian Montgomery is. I finally went to bed around 2 a.m, but I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Marcus. Where was he sleeping tonight? What was Candace telling him? Was she convincing him that I was the villain in this story? My phone buzzed. A text message. From Marcus. Mom, I'm sorry about what happened. Candace is sorry too. She was just stressed. Please reconsider. We really need help. I stared at that message for a long time. Candace was sorry. But was she really? Or had she just told Marcus to say that so she could get what she wanted? I typed back. Where are you staying tonight? A motel on Route 41. It's not great, but it's what we can afford. I almost caved. Almost offered to send money to help them find a better place. But then I remembered Officer Jenkins's words. People who are desperate and cornered can be dangerous. Marcus, I love you. But until you're ready to face the truth about what happened to your money and your marriage, I can't help you. I'm here when you're ready to have an honest conversation. He didn't respond. The next morning, I called Gerald at 9 o'clock sharp. Deborah had given me his direct number. Mrs. Davis, he said warmly. Aunt Deb told me you might call. She said you have a situation. I explained everything again. Gerald listened carefully, asking questions here and there. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. Mrs. Davis, what you're describing sounds like financial exploitation and possibly fraud, he said. If your daughter-in-law convinced your son to liquidate their assets under false pretenses, if she misrepresented how the money would be used, that could be criminal. But proving it is complicated, especially in a marriage where both parties have access to joint funds. So there's nothing we can do? I didn't say that, Gerald said. I said it's complicated, but the first step is gathering evidence. I need you to get me everything you can about her financial activities. Bank statements, credit card bills, receipts, everything. If she made these investments she claims, there should be paper trails. If there aren't, that's a red flag. How do I get those things? Marcus isn't even speaking to me right now. Does your son have access to his financial accounts? I assume so. It's his money too. Then you need to convince him to look at those accounts. Really look at them. See where the money went. If he can download statements and share them with me, I can analyze them. I can tell you if we're looking at fraud, embezzlement, or just extremely poor financial decisions. After I hung up with Gerald, I sat at my kitchen table and tried to figure out how to approach Marcus. How do you tell your child that his wife might be a criminal without pushing him further away? I decided to go to church. It was Sunday, and I needed guidance. I needed my church family. First Baptist had been my spiritual home for 30 years. Pastor Reginald knew me, knew Marcus, had even counseled Marcus and Candace before their wedding. If anyone could help me think clearly about this, it was him. The service was beautiful as always. The choir sang, "I need you to survive," and I felt those words in my bones. I did need my community to survive. I couldn't do this alone. After the service, I asked Pastor Reginald if I could speak with him privately. We went to his office, and I told him everything. Pastor Reginald was a man in his late 50s, with kind eyes and a calm presence. He'd seen every kind of human problem in his years of ministry, and nothing shocked him anymore. "Sister Lorraine," he said when I finished, "I'm going to be honest with you. When Marcus brought Candace to me for premarital counseling, I had concerns. My heart skipped. What kind of concerns? Nothing concrete, just a feeling. She was very focused on image, on appearances. She talked a lot about what she wanted from the marriage, the lifestyle, the status, but very little about partnership, about building something together. I tried to address it in our sessions, but Marcus was so in love, he couldn't see it, or didn't want to. Why didn't you say something to me? I did try, remember? Before the wedding. I asked to speak with you, but you were so busy with the preparations and I didn't want to seem like I was interfering. I've regretted that decision ever since. I did remember. Pastor Reginald had pulled me aside at the rehearsal dinner, started to say something, then stopped. I'd assumed he was just giving me a general blessing. So what do I do now? I asked. You do exactly what you're doing. You protect yourself first. You can't help Marcus if you're drowning too, and you gather truth. Light drives out darkness, Sister Lorraine. Whatever Candace is hiding, whatever she's done, it will come to light if you keep searching. Even if it destroys my relationship with my son? Pastor Reginald looked at me with compassion. Sometimes we have to lose our children for a little while so that we can truly save them. Marcus is in darkness right now. He can't see clearly. But when the truth comes out, and it will come out, he'll need you to be standing strong. He'll need you to be the lighthouse that guides him home. I left church feeling more determined than ever. I stopped by Deborah's house on the way home, and we spent the afternoon online, digging into Candace's background. What we found was disturbing. Candace had worked at 3 different marketing firms in the past 6 years. I found her LinkedIn profile, which listed all her jobs. But when Deborah called her friend who worked in corporate HR, we discovered that Candace had been fired from 2 of those jobs. One for expense account fraud, the other for creating fake client accounts and charging them for services that never happened. This woman has a pattern, Deborah said. This isn't her first time stealing money. We dug deeper into Julian Montgomery. His social media presence was minimal, but through some creative searching, we found his business registration. He owned a company called Elite Investment Consulting. But when we looked up the business, we found complaints. Multiple complaints on consumer protection websites. People claiming Julian had taken their money with promises of high returns and then disappeared. People calling him a con artist. My blood ran cold. She gave money to this man. I know she did. She gave Marcus's money to a con artist. We need proof, Deborah said. We need documentation. That's when my phone rang. It was Marcus. Mom, he said, and his voice sounded strange, hollow. Can I come over? Alone? I need to talk to you. Of course, baby. Come now. He arrived 20 minutes later, and the change in him broke my heart. He looked like he hadn't slept. His clothes were wrinkled. His eyes were red. Where's Candace? I asked. At the motel. She thinks I'm going to the bank to see if we can get a loan. He sat down on my couch, in the same spot where he'd sat 2 nights ago. Mom, I've been thinking about what you said, about taking responsibility, about facing the truth. I'm listening. I logged into our bank accounts last night, really looked at them for the first time in months. Mom, there are transactions I don't recognize, thousands of dollars going to places I've never heard of, transfers to accounts that aren't ours. She told me she was investing, but I can't find any investment accounts. I can't find any proof that any of this money went where she said it went. Can you print out those statements? I asked carefully. Can you show me? He pulled out his phone. I already downloaded them. I have 8 months of statements. Mom, it's bad. It's really bad. We spent the next 2 hours going through those statements. It was worse than bad. It was criminal. Candace had systematically drained their accounts. $50,000 to Julian Montgomery's company. $40,000 to various luxury retailers. $20,000 to a spa and wellness center that she apparently visited weekly. $15,000 in cash withdrawals. Thousands more to restaurants, hotels, and services I couldn't even identify. But the most disturbing discovery was a pattern. Every time Marcus's paycheck hit the account, Candace would immediately transfer large amounts to a separate account that only she had access to. An account Marcus didn't even know existed until he started digging through the fine print of his bank statements. She's been stealing from me, Marcus said, his voice breaking. My own wife has been stealing from me, moving my money to her private account. I've been working, paying bills, thinking we were building a future together, and she's been hiding money from me the whole time. How much is in that account? I asked. I don't know. I can't access it. But based on the transfers, it could be over $100,000. $100,000? While Marcus was sleeping in a cheap motel, thinking they were broke, Candace had a secret account with over $100,000 in it. Marcus, I said gently, we need to take this to a lawyer. This isn't just bad financial decisions. This is fraud. This is theft.
She's my wife, he said. How did I not see this? How did I let this happen? Because you loved her. Because you trusted her. Because you believed in your marriage. Those aren't faults, baby. Those are beautiful qualities. She took advantage of them.
He looked at me with tears streaming down his face. What do I do, Mom? You get out. You protect yourself. You work with the lawyer to recover what you can, and you get as far away from this woman as possible. She's going to be so angry, he whispered. Let her be angry, I said firmly. Her anger is not your responsibility. Her lies are not your fault. You deserve better than this, Marcus. You deserve so much better. He stayed at my house that night. I made up the guest room, and for the first time in days I felt like maybe we could get through this. Maybe we could survive. But I should have known it wouldn't be that easy. At 3 a.m, my doorbell rang, then rang again. Then someone started pounding on the door. I got up, terrified. Marcus was already coming down the hallway. Don't answer it, Mom. But I looked through the peephole and my blood ran cold. It was Candace, and she wasn't alone. She had Julian Montgomery with her, and they were both screaming at my door, demanding that Marcus come out. I know you're in there, Marcus, Candace yelled. I know your mother is turning you against me. Get out here right now. Julian pounded on the door harder. You're making a big mistake, man. Your wife and I had a business arrangement. If you try to back out now, there will be consequences. I grabbed my phone and called 911. There are 2 people threatening me at my front door. I have a police report from an assault 2 days ago. I need help now. The operator stayed on the line with me while we waited for the police. Candace and Julian kept pounding, kept yelling. Marcus stood frozen in my living room, staring at the door like he couldn't believe this was his life. When the police sirens finally echoed down my street, Candace and Julian ran. By the time the officers arrived, they were gone. But Officer Jenkins was one of the responding officers, and she recognized my address. Mrs. Davis, this is escalating. These people are becoming more desperate and more dangerous. You need protection. What kind of protection? A restraining order at minimum. And I strongly suggest you press charges for the assault from the other night. Create a legal barrier between you and these people. After the police left, Marcus collapsed on my couch. Who was that man? Who is Julian Montgomery? So I told him. I told him everything Deborah and I had discovered. The complaints about Julian's company, the con artist allegations, the fact that his wife had been photographed with this man multiple times over the past few months. She wasn't just spending our money, Marcus said slowly. She was giving it to her accomplice. They were working together. This whole thing was planned. The pieces were falling into place, but the picture they created was more horrifying than I could have imagined. My daughter-in-law wasn't just financially irresponsible, she was a con artist. And she'd targeted my son from the very beginning. The question was, what else had she been lying about? And how far was she willing to go to keep her secrets buried? As dawn broke over Chicago, and I sat with my broken son in my living room, I knew we were only seeing the beginning of this nightmare. And I was right. Because the next morning, when I checked my bank account to pay some bills, I discovered that someone had tried to steal my identity. Someone had attempted to open 3 credit cards in my name. Someone had tried to access my retirement savings. And I knew exactly who that someone was. The war had begun. And Candace had just made her biggest mistake. She'd come after my son. She'd attacked me in my home. And now she was trying to destroy me financially. But she'd forgotten one very important thing. I'd spent 35 years as a school administrator. I'd dealt with angry parents, manipulative teenagers, and corrupt board members. I'd fought battles and won wars that she couldn't even imagine. And I was about to show her what a real fight looked like. The identity theft attempt was the straw that broke the camel's back. I called Gerald at 7 a.m, not even caring that it was early on a Monday. She tried to steal my identity, I said as soon as he answered. Candace tried to open credit cards in my name and access my retirement account.
Do you have documentation? Gerald asked, immediately alert. I'm looking at the fraud alerts right now. The credit card companies flagged it as suspicious and called me. Perfect. Forward everything to me immediately. Mrs. Davis, this changes everything.
This isn't just about what she did to Marcus anymore. She's committed federal crimes against you personally. Identity theft, attempted fraud, and combined with the assault, we have her. By noon, I was sitting in Gerald's law office with Marcus, Deborah, and a stack of evidence that painted a damning picture of Candace Montgomery, or rather Candace Williams, as we'd discovered her real name was. Gerald had worked fast. In just a few hours, he'd uncovered things that made my skin crawl.
Candace Williams has been married twice before,
Gerald said, spreading documents across his conference table. Both marriages ended in divorce, both husbands filed restraining orders, and both accused her of financial exploitation. One of them tried to press charges, but she left the state before it went to trial. Marcus looked like he might be sick. She told me I was her first marriage. She said she'd never found the right person until me.
She's a professional, Gerald continued. Julian Montgomery is her cousin. They've been running cons together for at least 7 years. They target successful, trusting men. She marries them, gains access to their finances, and systematically drains their accounts. Julian sets up fake investment companies to launder the money. Then she moves on to the next victim.
How many victims? I asked.
That we can find? At least 4, including Marcus. But there could be more who never came forward out of shame.
I looked at my son. He was staring at the table, his whole world crumbling around him.
But here's the good news, Gerald said. Because she's attacked you, Mrs. Davis, and because she's committed identity theft against you, we can move forward with criminal charges without Marcus having to be the primary complainant. You can be the plaintiff. And once we open that door, we can bring in all the evidence about what she did to Marcus. The prosecutors will be very interested in a pattern of behavior like this.
What about the money? Marcus asked quietly. The money she hid in that secret account?
We'll get a court order to freeze her accounts during the investigation. If we can prove she obtained that money through fraud, you'll get it back. It won't be everything, but it's something.
Over the next 2 weeks, things moved fast. I filed a police report about the identity theft. Gerald filed for a restraining order on my behalf and helped Marcus file for one too. We compiled every piece of evidence we had: the bank statements, the Instagram posts, the fake investment receipts, the complaints about Julian's company, and the records of Candace's previous marriages. The church community rallied around us. Pastor Reginald organized a prayer vigil. Sister Tamika from the women's ministry brought us meals. Brother Isaiah, who was a retired detective, used his connections to dig up even more information about Candace and Julian's criminal activities. They've been doing this for years, Isaiah told us one evening at my kitchen table. Moving from city to city, state to state. Chicago was supposed to be their last big score before they left the country. They were planning to disappear with Marcus's money and start over somewhere with no extradition treaty. How do you know that? I asked. Because Julian got drunk at a bar last week and bragged about it to the wrong person. Someone who knows me. The streets talk, Lorraine, and word is out about what they did to Marcus. They're not as untouchable as they think. Marcus had moved back home with me. We'd converted my home office into a bedroom for him, and every night we'd sit at the kitchen table and he'd tell me more about his marriage, the red flags he'd ignored, the questions he hadn't asked. The times Candace had gaslit him into thinking he was being controlling when he asked about their finances. "She was so good at it, Mom," he said one night, his voice full of pain. "She'd make me feel guilty for not trusting her. She'd say I was being like her ex-boyfriends who tried to control her money. She'd cry and tell me that real love meant trusting your partner completely. And I believed her. 'Baby, you were being a good husband,' I said. 'You were trying to honor your vows. She took advantage of that. But that's on her, not you.' The court date for the restraining order hearing arrived on a cold November morning. Gerald said Candace and Julian would have to appear if they wanted to contest it. I didn't think they'd show up. I was wrong. Candace walked into that courtroom like she was walking onto a runway. Designer dress, perfect hair, expensive jewelry. She had a lawyer with her, some slick-looking man in a suit that probably cost more than my car. But Julian wasn't with her. According to the bailiff, he'd been arrested 2 days earlier in Indiana on unrelated fraud charges. His luck had finally run out. The hearing was supposed to be quick, just a formality to extend my temporary restraining order into a permanent one. But Candace's lawyer had other plans.
"Your Honor," he said smoothly, "my client is the real victim here. Mrs. Davis has been harassing my client and her husband, making false accusations, trying to destroy their marriage out of jealousy and spite. Mrs. Davis assaulted my client first, and my client was merely defending herself." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Gerald stood up immediately. "Your Honor, we have documented evidence of the assault on Mrs. Davis, including police reports, photographs of injuries, and witness statements. We also have evidence that Ms. Williams—" "Montgomery," Candace's lawyer interrupted. "Her legal name is Candace Montgomery." "Actually," Gerald said calmly, "her legal name is Candace Williams. Montgomery is the name she took from her third husband without legally changing it. We have marriage certificates and divorce records that prove Ms. Williams has a pattern of fraud, identity deception, and financial exploitation." The judge, an older black woman named Judge Freeman, looked up from her papers with interest. "Mr. Freeman, do you have these records?" "Yes, Your Honor." Gerald began presenting the evidence. Every document we'd gathered, every bank statement, every complaint against Julian's company, every police report from Candace's previous victims. I watched Candace's face as her whole carefully constructed world fell apart in that courtroom. Her lawyer kept trying to object, but Judge Freeman wanted to hear it all. When Gerald presented the evidence of the identity theft attempt against me, including the fraud alerts and the credit card applications with my forged signature, Judge Freeman's expression hardened. "Ms. Williams," she said, "I'm granting the permanent restraining order. You are to stay at least 500 feet away from Mrs. Davis at all times. But beyond that, I'm referring this case to the state's attorney for criminal prosecution. The evidence of fraud and identity theft here is overwhelming." Candace jumped to her feet. "This is ridiculous. That old woman is lying. She's just mad because her son chose me over her." "Ms. Williams, sit down," Judge Freeman said sharply, "and I suggest you watch your tone in my courtroom." "You're all against me," Candace shouted. "None of you understand what it's like to have to fight for what you deserve. I earned that money. I built that lifestyle. Marcus was nothing before me." Marcus stood up in the gallery. "I gave you everything," he said, his voice shaking but strong. "I gave you my home, my savings, my trust, my love, and you threw it away. No, you stole it. You planned this from the beginning. You never loved me." "Of course I didn't love you!" Candace screamed, and the whole courtroom went silent. "You were a mark, an easy mark, a desperate, lonely man looking for a woman to worship him. You made it so easy." Her lawyer grabbed her arm, trying to make her stop talking, but she jerked away from him. "You want to know the truth?" she continued, spinning to face the whole courtroom. "I've done this 5 times, 6 counting you, Marcus. And I'd do it again. You people with your 9-to-5 jobs and your little savings accounts, you don't know how to really live. I deserve the best. I deserve luxury. And if I have to take it from pathetic men like you, then so be it." Judge Freeman slammed her gavel. "Bailiff, take Ms. Williams into custody. She's just confessed to multiple counts of fraud in my courtroom." The bailiff moved toward Candace, and that's when she tried to run. She actually tried to run out of the courtroom in her high heels, but she didn't get far. The bailiff caught her at the door, and her screams echoed through the courthouse as they led her away in handcuffs. Her lawyer looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. Judge Freeman looked at Gerald. "Mr. Freeman, work with the state's attorney's office.
I want every victim of this woman's crimes contacted. I want full restitution for everyone she's hurt, and I want her behind bars where she belongs."
"Yes, Your Honor."
The judge then looked at me and Marcus. "Mrs. Davis,
"I'm sorry you and your son had to go through this, but I want you to know, what you did took courage. You protected yourself and your son when it would have been easier to just look the other way. You should be proud." As we left the courthouse, Marcus broke down in tears. I held my son in the parking lot while he sobbed, for the wife who never existed, for the marriage that was a lie, for the future that had been stolen from him. But underneath the grief, I could feel something else. Relief. Freedom. The truth had come out. The monster had been exposed. Over the next few months, the legal proceedings continued. The state's attorney's office built a case against Candace that included not just what she'd done to Marcus and me, but what she'd done to her previous victims. With Julian arrested and willing to testify against her in exchange for a reduced sentence, the prosecution had everything they needed. Candace's secret bank account was frozen, and Marcus was able to recover $115,000. It wasn't the full $600,000 she'd stolen, but it was something. Enough for him to start over. The other victims came forward. Men from 3 different states, all with similar stories, all charmed by Candace's beauty and confidence, all convinced to trust her with their money, all left with nothing. In February, Candace Williams was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison for fraud, identity theft, and money laundering. Julian Montgomery got 12 years for his part in the scheme. Standing in that courtroom for the sentencing, watching Candace in her orange jumpsuit with no makeup and her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, I felt something I didn't expect. Not triumph, not satisfaction, just sadness. Sadness for the person she could have been if she'd used her intelligence and charisma for good instead of evil. Sadness for all the people she'd hurt. Sadness for my son, who still loved the woman she'd pretended to be. But also relief. Relief that it was over. Relief that she couldn't hurt anyone else. Marcus filed for divorce. It was finalized in March. He sold the few possessions Candace had left behind, all those designer handbags and shoes and jewelry, and used the money to start therapy. He needed it. We both did. Pastor Reginald recommended a good therapist who specialized in helping people recover from financial abuse. Marcus went twice a week. Slowly, gradually, he started to heal. He got a new apartment in April, nothing fancy, just a 1-bedroom place in a good neighborhood. He said he wanted to start simple. Build his life back piece by piece, the right way this time. On Mother's Day, Marcus came to my house with flowers and a card. We sat on my porch drinking lemonade, watching the neighborhood kids play in the street. "Mom," he said, "I never thanked you properly. For saving me. For not giving up on me even when I gave up on myself." "Baby, you're my son," I said. "I could never give up on you." "But you didn't just save me from Candace," he continued. "You taught me something more important. You taught me that sometimes love means saying no. Sometimes protecting someone means letting them fall so they can learn to stand back up." I squeezed his hand. "You're standing now." "Yeah," he said with a small smile. "I am." We sat in comfortable silence for a while, and I thought about everything we'd been through. The betrayal, the pain, the fear, the fight. It had nearly destroyed us. But somehow, on the other side of it, we were stronger. Not just Marcus and me, but our whole community. Deborah, Gerald, Pastor Reginald, Sister Tamika, Brother Isaiah, everyone who had rallied around us when we needed it most. That's what family really means. Not just blood, but the people who show up when you're in the dark and help you find your way back to the light. My phone buzzed. A text from one of Candace's previous victims, a man named Trevor from Atlanta. He'd gotten my number through Gerald. "Just wanted to say thank you for having the courage to fight. Because of you, I got my money back. Because of you,
She can't hurt anyone else. You're a hero." I showed Marcus the text. He smiled. "He's right, you know. You are a hero, Mom." "No," I said firmly. "We're heroes. We did this together. You found the courage to face the truth. That's the hardest part." As the sun set over my neighborhood, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, I thought about the woman I'd been 9 months ago. The woman who answered her door to find her son with suitcases, asking for help. The woman who had to make the hardest decision of her life. I'd been terrified, heartbroken, uncertain. But I'd been strong, and that strength had saved us both. Marcus stayed for dinner that night. I made his favorite: fried chicken, collard greens, mac and cheese, and cornbread. We ate and laughed and talked about the future. About his plans to save money and eventually buy another house. About my plans to finally take that trip to Ghana I'd been dreaming about. About second chances and new beginnings. As I cleaned up the dishes later, Marcus came into the kitchen and hugged me from behind. "I love you, Mom," he said. "Thank you for teaching me what real love looks like. Not the fairy tale version, the real version. The kind that protects and guides and sometimes says no. The kind that fights for what's right even when it's hard." I turned and hugged him properly, this man I'd raised, this son I'd fought for, this beautiful soul who'd survived something that would have broken a lesser person. "I love you too, baby," I said. "Always have, always will." And in that moment, standing in my kitchen with my son, with the scars of battle still healing, but the war finally won, I understood something profound. Justice isn't just about courtrooms and prison sentences. It's about standing up for yourself and the people you love. It's about refusing to be a victim. It's about choosing truth over comfort, strength over ease. And sometimes, the greatest act of love is refusing to enable someone's destruction, even when that someone is your own child. I'd lost my son for a little while, but I'd gotten him back. Not the naive, trusting man who'd shown up at my door with suitcases, but a wiser, stronger version. A man who'd walked through fire and come out forged in steel. That night, after Marcus left, I sat on my porch with a cup of tea and looked up at the stars. I thought about Candace in her prison cell. I thought about all the people she'd hurt, and I said a prayer, not just for her victims, but for her too. For the person she could have been. For the redemption she might someday find. Because that's what we do. We fight for justice, but we don't let hate consume us. We protect ourselves, but we don't lose our humanity. We survive. We heal. We grow stronger. And we never, ever give up on the people we love. The question Judge Freeman had asked, how far was I willing to go to seek justice, had been answered, all the way, to the very end, until truth prevailed and my family was safe. And it had been worth every sleepless night, every tear, every moment of doubt. Because on the other side of that fight, I found something precious, not just justice, liberation. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.